Transform your backyard this fall.
Let's do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome into the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X__ Jonathan Smith to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And, of course, 1430 a.m. as well. Super excited for today's show. Blaiden Kirk from the Stay Hot Pod is going to join at 11:20 as we continue to talk about the Colts and their 2-0 start to the season. Should be a 3-0 start. They're favored on the road against a really bad Tennessee Titans team that, is going to be fighting for their life to win 3 games. That's what it seems like for the Titans through these first 2 weeks. They are simply not very good at football. No other way to put it, okay? They are just not good at football in any way, shape, or form. Are they the worst team in the NFL? They might be. I don't know if they are. I think the Saints are probably worse, just because I think I'd rather have Cam Ward than Spencer Rattler. With that being said, Spencer Rattler has not looked terrible in New Orleans, so maybe I'm wrong there. The Jets might be better than the Titans, maybe. I don't know. I mean, they did score 32 against Pittsburgh, so they probably are. The Panthers are pretty terrible. If you haven't seen the Panthers play, I would advise against you watching the Panthers because they're pretty awful. But at the end of the day, the Tennessee Titans definitely are in the discussion for the worst team in the NFL. And part of that has to do with Cam Ward and this just really rough start that he's gotten off to. And look, he was going to get off to a rough start. When you're opening on the road against the Denver Broncos, who I know that the Colts made look, not great defensively. But with that being said, the Broncos are very talented on defense, okay? So Cam Ward opens on the road against the Broncos, and then he gets the Los Angeles Rams, another team with a very stout defense, right? Byron Young and Jared Verse coming off the edge, rushing the passer. They've got Fisk in the middle, another guy drafted out of Florida State who's really good at defensive tackle. That's a really good defense as well. We saw it last year when they really challenged the Eagles in the playoffs. They were the only team to come close to beating the Eagles in the playoffs last year. So Cam Ward has just been kind of ran through the gauntlet these first 2 weeks of some of the more premier NFL defenses. Okay, it's part of why he's only completing 50% of his passes. Okay, and it's part of why he's only thrown for 287 yards. Now, to his credit, he's the first rookie quarterback ever to start the first 2 games of his career and not throw an interception. Pretty impressive stuff, right? Especially when you're playing against those 2 defenses and you don't have a run game. Okay, once again, 1 game against a good Broncos defense, another game against a good Rams defense. He'll probably look better against the Colts because the Colts have no pass rush, at least compared to the Rams and the Broncos. The pass rush drops off pretty substantially. And the Colts' run defense is not good, and it's not going to be good at all this year. And when you can run the football, and everyone's going to be able to run the football against the Colts, okay? Like, DeForest Buckner and Grover Stewart are not saving this Colts run defense, okay? It's just not happening. Joe Bacci, Zaire Franklin, not good enough to have this run defense hold up against a guy in Tony Pollard who is a very good running back, not a great one. Okay, he's a good one, a guy who ran for 1,300 yards last year. For reference, Jonathan Taylor ran for 1,400 yards last year. So I expect for the Titans to be able to run the football, unlike their first two games against the Rams and the Broncos. And when you can run the football, makes everything easier. Okay, it makes everything easier on your young quarterback. I think a large part of why Daniel Jones has had success for the Colts to open the season is because Jonathan Taylor's, averaging 118 rushing yards per game. If that holds, that will be the highest average rushing yards per game of his career. It's the reality of it. When you can run the football, it makes everything easier. Now, when your best weapon is Tony Pollard, like he is for the Tennessee Titans, that's problematic. It is, right? It's part of why the Titans aren't very good. The guys that Cam Ward is throwing the football to they're just not very good at football. No, just no other way to put it. Calvin Ridley, it's a big name because he played at Alabama and all that kind of stuff, and he was pretty good in he was pretty good in Atlanta, right? And then he gets suspended for a year for gambling on NFL games, even though he was away from the team. It was kind of a weird thing. So, he gets in trouble. He has to sit out for a year, comes back, plays in Jacksonville for a year where he was pretty okay. Now he's in Tennessee where he's okay at best. And then you look at their other weapons, and it's just, it's a lot of who's. Elick Aomanor. You don't know who that is. Tyler Lockett, right? Older veteran wide receiver, right? Tight end is Chig Okonkwo, right? Backup tight end, Gunnar Helm, second round pick out of Texas, a guy who you would think would be pretty good at some point. Okay, so the weapons for the Tennessee Titans are no good. Okay, and it's tough on a young quarterback when your weapons are that lacking. Okay, it's going to be much easier for J.J. McCarthy this year because he's throwing the football to Justin Jefferson. It just makes it easier. Whenever Dak Prescott retires, right, which won't be for another 5 years or so, but whoever comes in, they're going to get to throw the football to CeeDee Lamb. That'll make their life much easier. Jackson Dart is going to start games for the New York Giants here at some point, and when he does, it's going to be made a little bit easier getting to throw the football to a guy like Malik Neighbors. Okay, so it's just a really, really tough thing for Cam Ward. There's a reason why the Titans got the number 1 overall pick last year. It's because they weren't very good. And then you throw in this head coach and Brian Callahan on top of it who doesn't know the rules. Like, good luck beating anybody. Now, there are some pieces with the Titans that are good and that are likable. Peter Skoronski, right? 11th overall pick, offensive guard out of Northwestern a couple years ago. Good player, good offensive guard. I like him. J.C. Latham, right? The 7th overall pick 2 years ago, right? Big right tackle out of Alabama. Okay, good player, right? Lloyd Cushenberry III, third round, center taken out of LSU. Okay, so those three guys we'll see, could all be really good players at some point. They're all pretty solid right now. When you look at where they were taken, like the Titans definitely have big hopes and aspirations for those three players. So I'm very interested to see how the Colts pass rush does this week, which has been pretty much non-existent through the first two games. You say, well, Jonathan, they had, 3 sacks against the Dolphins. Yeah, those sacks came via the blitz, via Tua not seeing that the Colts were going to blitz Nick Cross and Kenny Moore. And, that led to free sacks. But in terms of the actual trenches, this Colts defensive line has been amongst the worst in the NFL. Like they're not creating pressure consistently enough. And that is one of the concerning things about the Colts for this season. Like there's a lot to like about, the Colts and how they're 2-0. And I do think that the success will continue enough, at least to a point where they're 10-7, 11-6, and they're in the playoffs. I have heard many people compare the Colts 2-0 start to the Saints 2-0 start last year. For those unfamiliar, the Saints came out very much on fire. They beat Carolina 47-10, and then they beat the Cowboys 44-19. And everyone was like, oh, the Saints, who would have thought? They're kind of the surprise team this year. And then they won 5 games. Part of that's because Derek Carr got hurt and all those other things. But the other part of it is that their defense just didn't have very many good players. And their pass rush wasn't very good. And their linebackers weren't very good. And if you wanted to tell me that the Colts were going to fall off a little bit because of this pass rush, I would have a very hard time refuting that idea. Simple as that. Because this Colts pass rush has been non-existent, and I do think that the Titans have the talent. Talent and skill are two very different things, but they do have the talent to make it another tough week on this Colts pass rush. And so I'm very intrigued to see kind of how they hold up against this Titans offensive line. Now, Titans offensive line, it's not outstanding. It's not outstanding, but it's certainly not terrible either. Okay, Cam Ward's average pocket time this year. So that is average time in the pocket before he throws it or has to escape the pocket is 2.6 seconds through 2 games against 2 teams with a very good pass rush in Denver and the Los Angeles Rams. For reference, the Colts offensive line is played pretty well this year. I think everyone would be in agreement on that. Daniel Jones's average pocket time is 2.4 seconds. Part of that might be because Daniel Jones is getting rid of the ball quicker than Cam Ward and all of those things, which it seems like he is. He's making decisions very quickly to start this year. But that is a concerning thing. Like, this Titans offensive line has done a pretty decent job holding up through these first 2 weeks against significantly better pass rushes than what the Colts have. Like, Nick Bonito and Zach Allen and those guys in Denver, amongst the best in the league. Nick Bonito, 13.5 sacks last year. That led the NFL. Broncos as a whole led the NFL in sacks last year. Byron Young, Jared Verse, 2 outstanding edge rushers for the Los Angeles Rams. Okay, so the fact that the Titans offensive line is held up that well through 2 games against 2 very good defensive lines. Also got to throw in Kobe Turner as well, right? Braden Fisk, really good as well, playing on the defensive line for the Los Angeles Rams. Like, that doesn't bode well. That doesn't bode well for the Colts in this game because the pass rush just hasn't been very good. And that's why it is so incredibly important for Laiatu Latu to play. I talked about it before the season started. The Colts pass rush was reliant on Laiatu Latu becoming a guy because they just don't have the horses for it. Tyquan Lewis, not going to cut it. Samson Ebukam, not going to cut it, even though he had a sack week 1 against the Dolphins. Right? Like, they just don't have a real, true edge rushing presence, and that is incredibly problematic for them. It's why they only have 3 sacks through 2 games. That's tied for 25th in the NFL. And if Laiatu Latu, if this hamstring thing becomes a real issue, then they're going to fall lower than that. And they will be amongst the worst in the NFL at rushing the passer. It's just the very simple reality of it, because they've got some pretty decent offensive lines to go up against this year. The Titans, as I kind of laid out, I do think that their offensive line is good. I don't think it's great. The Rams' offensive line is pretty good. The Cardinals' offensive line is really good. They've invested a lot of draft capital in that over the past couple years. Chargers' offensive line is good. Okay, you can just kind of keep working your way through it from there. Now, they do get to play the Houston Texans twice, whose offensive line is absolutely abysmal. But that is the thing that I'm going to be paying attention to this week. because I do expect for the Colts to win this game because, as I said, the Titans are bad. But this pass rush has to improve for the Colts. And it could be as simple as, you know what? The Denver Broncos offensive line is one of the 5 best in the NFL, and the Colts struggled because of that, right? It could be a Denver thing as opposed to a Colts lack this thing. So I hope that's what it is. We're going to find out this week because I expect for the Colts to be up late in the game and the Titans being forced to throw the football to make a comeback. So we'll see how it goes. The secondary with Trevarius Ward likely being back. He did practice yesterday. With him being back, the secondary should hold up longer, should give this defensive line a little bit more time to get home. We'll see what happens, but hopefully Leatu Latu is back in action and makes things a little bit easier on the rest of this Colts pass rush. Now, the Titans offense is bad. Titans defense, though, not good, but certainly not bad. I'll tell you why in 4 minutes.
The best takes. Maybe. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 a.m. Blaiden Kirk of the Stay Hot Pod. He joins in an hour. We will continue to talk about the Colts, and they're amazing. 2-0 start and how they're never going to lose another football game for as long as I live. It's where the Colts are headed right now. And part of that's because the division that they play in, it's hot garbage. There's no other way to put it. Okay. It is arguably the worst division in football. Maybe it's the NFC South. If it's not the NFC South, then it's the AFC South. Either one. Okay. I would probably argue the NFC South just because the Texans, Colts, and Jags, I think we're all at least serviceable football teams, whereas the Saints and the Panthers probably couldn't beat like Center Grove High School. That's not true. They would crush Center Grove, but you know what I mean. So the one thing about the Tennessee Titans, as awful as they are, is the defense I do think is good. The offense lacks talent. The defense actually has a little bit of talent. It's not a ton of talent, but it's enough to be impactful. You know, like they had Bo Nix, questioning his football career week 1. All right. Like they did a really good job of holding down the Los Angeles Rams offense, through the first 3 quarters of that game, of which they lost 33 to 19. Right. But if you watched it, it was, they were up 13-10 at halftime. Okay, and then the second half, the Rams made some adjustments. Matthew Stafford, continued to be the guy that just makes me like watching football. Like there are just certain guys that I talked about this a little bit yesterday with Tyler Warren. There are certain guys that when I watch them play football, they just make me happy. I just can't help but smile. Matthew Stafford's was one of those guys. They got it figured out in the second half, but the Titans have put together 6 really good quarters of defense. So I do expect for, the Colts to maybe punt in this game. We'll see. But the Titans offense, while it lacks talent, the defense is much better off. If you made a list of the best players on the Tennessee Titans, you have to start with Jeffrey Simmons, a guy who's been one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL since 2021. And then you'd have to go to L'Jarius Sneed. Okay? One of the better cornerbacks in the NFL, only played 5 games last year after injuring his quad. Their defensive coordinator is a guy that Shane Steichen coached with in Philadelphia. I don't know if that matters or not. But that they're sitting in that office and they're, writing stuff up and they're kind of weighing, hey, if I did this, how would you counter it? And okay, if you did that, then that means I would need this route to counter that. And that they would have conversations like that. And they're obviously familiar with each other because when you're hanging out in the same building every day, you become familiar with one another. That's just how it goes, right? So Jeffrey Simmons, though, it's kind of where it all starts for them. As I said, one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL since 2021. Since that year, he's been a Pro Bowler 3 times, and he's been All-Pro twice. Okay, he's not a dominant pass rusher, right? His career high is only 8.5 sacks in a single season. But the run defense is really good. And that's kind of problematic for the Colts because they've ran the football extremely well these first 2 weeks. And when you have a game wrecker in the middle, like Jeffrey Simmons can be, he's not always that, but he can be that, then that kind of throws things off because all of a sudden, the Colts have been really good on first down this year, right? They've been really good on first down. It's part of why they've had so much success when you constantly find yourself in 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, 2nd and 6, right? Just the ability to stay on schedule, that just makes 2nd and 3rd down significantly easier. right? And we love when the Colts go first down, second down, first down, which seems to be a very common occurrence through these first 2 weeks of the NFL season. Jeffrey Simmons is a guy who puts you in 2nd and 8. And you're like, oh, man, that's not good. He's a guy who will, rip through and have a tackle for loss. And all of a sudden, you're 2nd and 12, and Daniel Jones has to throw the football 2 plays in a row, and the defense knows that he has to throw the football 2 plays in a row. So keeping Jeffrey Simmons in check, obviously, is one of the more important things on Sunday. I expect for Quentin Nelson to be totally fine doing that, right? One of the best offensive guards in the NFL. But this is another test for Matt Gonsalves and Tanner Bortolini, 2 guys that I was very worried about before the start of the season, that I am no longer worried about. They have both done an excellent job these first 2 weeks against 2, really good fronts in the Miami Dolphins. And, of course, Zach Allen, Nick Bonito, and everyone else on that Denver Broncos defensive line. So no longer worried about those guys. They should be fine as well. They just can't allow for Jeffrey Simmons to wreck the game. L'Jarius Sneed is still one of the best cornerbacks in the NFL, even though he hurt his quad last year and missed, 12 of the 17 games. He's healthy now. He's still a dude, but I'm not really worried about him because the Colts just tore up Patrick Surtain, the reigning defensive player of the year in the NFL, last week. And this is one of the nice things about the Colts. Okay, I don't like their receiver room as much as everybody else does, just because they don't have the guy. But I do think that when you play against teams like the Titans or the Broncos who have a premier corner, it's kind of tougher for the defense to know what to do with them because they don't have a true because the Colts don't have a true number 1 wide receiver. The receivers are obviously good for the Indianapolis Colts, but they don't have a Jamar Chase. They don't have a Justin Jefferson. They don't have a CeeDee Lamb. Okay, they don't have a legit premier. He's clearly our best receiver. We want to get him the football, 10 times a game. They don't have a guy like that where the Titans would just be like, yeah, L'Jarius Sneed, you're going to cover him. Or L'Jarius Sneed, you're going to cover the second best receiver. And we're going to bracket that guy and double that guy. The Colts don't have that. It's a very balanced attack. And I do think one of the more impressive coaching things that we've seen from Shane Steichen this year has been his ability to spread the football around to all of the different options that the Colts have. If you go back to last week, okay, Josh Downs had 6 receptions. That led the way. Tyler Warren had 4, Alec Pierce had 4, and Michael Pittman Jr. had 4. That is a very good distribution amongst the best, amongst the 4 best wide receivers or pass catchers for the Colts. Week 1 was a little more lopsided. I think part of that is because they only threw the football 29 times as opposed to, I think they got up over 34 times in, week 2 against the Broncos. But Michael Pittman Jr., he had 6 receptions. Tyler Warren had 7, so a nice little balance there between those 2 guys. Josh Downs only 2 receptions that week, and Alec Pierce only with 1, but they all still had multiple targets, right? So the way that the ball has been spread around, I think bodes well for dealing with guys like Patrick Surtain and L'Jarius Sneed. Okay, so I think that makes it a little easier when you're playing against some of the better cornerbacks in the NFL, right? It's just a little bit tougher for them to follow and shut down a great wide receiver. Okay. Another thing that's very beneficial for the Colts is this offensive line. And, I've been pretty critical or was pretty critical in the offseason of just the questions that I had about Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves. The rest of the offensive line, obviously very good, even though I am still waiting on Braden Smith to get hurt because it happens every single year. Hopefully it doesn't happen this year. So the time given by the offensive line paired with all of the pass catchers that the Colts have has led to a really good start to the offense for the Colts this season. But things could slow down a little bit. I don't want to overreact here. But the most important thing for any team in the NFL and for the Indianapolis Colts are injuries. The best team does not win. The healthiest team does. A large part of why the Eagles just ran through everybody in the playoffs last year is because they were incredibly healthy. All 22 guys who started week one for the Eagles last year started in the wild card round of the playoffs. And they stayed pretty healthy throughout it. I know Brandon Graham, he got hurt in that wild card game. But outside of that, they were incredibly healthy. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are limping into the Super Bowl with a guard having to play tackle. And that's just not going to work very well when you have to block those guys that the Eagles had last year. So health, very important. The best team doesn't win. The healthiest team does. Colts, I thought that they were going to get healthier this week, but that may not be the case. Javarius Ward he practiced yesterday, right? He is in the final stage of concussion protocol, so he's almost out. He should be good to play on Sunday. He is desperately needed. Okay, like the Colts clearly missed him. You need a guy to shadow Calvin Ridley. Javarius Ward can do that. If Xavier Howard is your best corner, that's problematic, right? When it's Javarius Ward, though, you feel pretty good about it. So he's needed desperately, and it looks like he's going to be back on Sunday, getting ready to play again. Leatu Latu, already talked about him. He was a limited participant yesterday. So, that Colts pass rush, non-existent without him against the Broncos. He's working back from a hamstring. He was limited yesterday. Hamstring injuries are weird. Okay, they're just weird. I'm not convinced that he'll play Sunday, at least not as convinced as I am that Travarius Mooney Ward will play. And, that's frustrating because the Colts need him because Tyquan Lewis and Samson Ebukam, they're not getting it done. JT Tuimoloau isn't good enough to play it, apparently. Sucks that the Colts used a second-round pick on him, and he's not ready to go from week one. He hasn't played a snap. He was a healthy scratch week one against the Dolphins, and then this last Sunday, he just didn't play. It's incredible. Gotta love Chris Ballard and his ability to draft edge rushers. So those guys are getting healthy. The issue is Tyler Warren didn't practice yet yesterday, and Josh Downs didn't practice either. Obviously, we know that Tyler Warren's needed. He's a big pass-catching tight end who can block, and the drop-off between him and Ogletree and Mo Alley Cox, pretty substantial. Okay, they need him, a guy who, that they can kind of line up all over the place. They've put him at fullback. They've split him out wide. They've put him in line with his hand in the dirt. So, that's a very important piece of this Colts offense who didn't practice yesterday. Josh Downs, he didn't practice either. He's the emergency guy for Daniel Jones. He was targeted more than anyone else on Sunday against the Broncos. And I think that's in part because the Broncos did a much better job of creating pressure on Daniel Jones as opposed to the Miami Dolphins. So he's important as well. That being said, they could just be given Wednesday off because they have some small nagging injuries. Okay, if they don't practice today, that will be the point of concern of oh no, are the Colts really about to lose Tyler Warren and Josh Downs for any sort of time? So hopefully those guys are okay, and they were just nursing some small injuries yesterday. We'll obviously have to wait and see. So Colts doing a decent job of staying healthy so far. Would like it if they could be just a little bit healthier, though. That would be great. But the offensive line continues to hold up, right? If this offensive line stays healthy, then I'll continue to feel pretty good about the Colts going forward because they've been so good to start the year. Daniel Jones went on Up and Adams yesterday and talked about the offensive line. Shane Steichen talked about, the offensive line a little bit and Daniel Jones's ability to handle pressure. I've got all that audio for you in 4 minutes.
fits in today's sports world. It's here. The real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X, __ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there and watch the show there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app, which you can download wherever you find your apps. And of course, you can also listen on 1430 AM if you're just, cruising around the Indianapolis area. And what's going on with my computer? Okay, whatever. Daniel Jones yesterday went on Up and Adams. Okay, Kay Adams, host of that show, and she's asking him all sorts of questions. And one of the better questions that she asked was about this Colts offensive line, and Daniel Jones just laying it out there for everybody, letting everybody know that this Colts offensive line is very, very good. Here's Daniel Jones talking about the big hog mollies up front.
Very, very good. Very good. I think, pass pro's been incredible. We've run the ball well when we've needed to run it. They're locked in, and Tony Sperano, the line coach, does a great job getting them prepped, picking up blitzes, knowing what the team's doing.
Daniel Jones right there talking about this offensive line and just how good they've been. And it is one of the big stories for the Colts this year. It's just this offensive line and how outstanding it has been. You can put it up there with any of the really good offensive lines in football, that whether that's the Eagles, the Broncos, the Rams offensive line has been really good to open the season. The Lions, they had to replace a center and an offensive guard, just like the Colts, and they've kind of moved, really well with those adjustments as well. So just a very important and very good opening to the year for this Indianapolis Colts offensive line. And I was just flat out wrong. Look, I obviously have very big opinions. That's a large part. That is the show. And I was flat out wrong. You see, I can admit when I'm wrong. I was flat out wrong on Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves. I had a lot of questions. I felt like the more Tanner Bortolini played last year, the worse he got. He came out that first game, Ryan Kelly was hurt, and he was great. And he was the talk of the town. The Colts have their new center, all that kind of stuff. But then, when Tanner Bortolini got hurt and Danny Pinter started playing center, and Danny Pinter was, playing pretty well. And then Tanner Bortolini got healthy and he never went back in. They kept rolling with Danny Pinter. And that was a red flag to me. They moved Gonsalves, right, from right tackle to right guard. And they had him playing real legitimate snaps in the final preseason game with a bunch of guys who were on the verge of getting cut. I saw that, and I was just like, that's not a good sign. I don't like that either. But as Peaches just said in our YouTube chat, Indy Sports Ticket, if you want to hop in the chat and be more part of the conversation, as Peaches just said, those O-linemen are cooking. They are. They're cooking. They're eating. Whatever positive slang you want to throw in there. It's they're Sigma, as the kids might say. Having a wife who is a 6th grade teacher is so fascinating because she fills me in on all of the slang, and I don't really get a lot of it, but hey, that's fine. I don't have to get it. She does. So those two guys have been so good in the middle, because I I didn't have any questions about Bernard Raymond, who the Colts committed $100 million to in an extension over the offseason. Quentin Nelson's been awesome ever since he showed up. Braden Smith, when he's been healthy, he's been good. So those two guys, their ability to just kind of plug in and be good immediately, like there has been no learning curve. And it's not like they've played the Saints and the Panthers. Like they played Zach Sealer and the Miami Dolphins, who was a non-factor, and he's a fringe top 10 defensive tackle in the NFL. Week 2, they're playing Zach Allen, who I know got a little banged up during the game, but that is another one of the better interior defensive linemen in the NFL. He wasn't much of a factor in that game either. It has just been so impressive watching those two guys just kind of move in and be really good so quickly. So I was very wrong on both of them. This week, Jeffrey Simmons is the guy that they will be dealing with. And I'm sure that they'll be fine because they've proven through these first 2 weeks that they can play at a high level, both Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves. Daniel Jones has only been hit 12 times on 63 pass attempts this year. Like that's really good. Okay? Like that is a very impressive number from this Colts offensive line. The left side of the offensive line, obviously everyone felt good about. There were no questions about Raymond and Nelson. The question continues to be, can Blaiden Smith stay healthy? Because the offensive tackle depth on this Colts team isn't very good. He's done that so far, and then you've got these two young guys, in the middle, and Bortolini and Gonsalves, who just continue to be really good. And yesterday, I did a whole thing on how it's very important to kind of know who you are. It's very important to know what you're good at. And this is a football thing, a radio thing, whatever your job is. It is important to know what you're good at and what you're not good at. Chris Ballard needs to understand that he's terrible at drafting edge rushers. JT Tuimoloau, the latest in all that. But he also needs to understand that he's very good at drafting offensive linemen. Okay? Like you can question and say terrible things about Chris Ballard in many areas of his ability to build a football team. But the one thing that you absolutely cannot question is his ability to draft offensive linemen, because he has done an excellent job doing that throughout his time here in Indianapolis. Okay. Now, another thing that makes this offensive line even more impressive for the Colts is that Daniel Jones has been blitzed more than any other quarterback in the NFL. And the offensive line has handled it, and Daniel Jones has also handled it. Here is Colts head coach Shane Steichen talking about Daniel Jones and his ability to kind of handle the blitzes that he's seen to start the season.
I think understanding what's going on defense, understanding where the pressures are coming from, knowing the timing of when you got to get the ball out, knowing how you're picked up, whether you're going to be hot or not. I think that's a huge part of it, and that's the game. That's the game within the game, and that's studying it and understanding what's going on the other side of the field, so you can play on rhythm and play on time. And I think our line's done a hell of a job, protecting for him these last 2 weeks.
Shane Steichen right there talking about Daniel Jones and how he's handled the pressure, as the starting quarterback, getting blitzed consistently. And once again, Daniel Jones been blitzed more than any other quarterback in the NFL to open the season. And it hasn't really mattered for two reasons. Like Shane Steichen said, Daniel Jones has done an excellent job of identifying the pressures and, changing the protection and doing all of those things. And then, don't get me wrong, he missed a free rusher. I can't remember if that was the Broncos game or the Dolphins game. So it hasn't been flawless, but it's been really good, right? Watching him kind of deal with all of the blitzes that he has seen. Okay. That's, a large part of why the Colts have had so much success. That paired with this offensive line that is executed whatever the call has been, sliding to the right, sliding to the left, half sliding to the right, half sliding to the left, whatever it is, they've done a very good job of executing whatever the call has been in terms of the pass protection. And that is kind of the thing with offensive lines that is talked about the most, the ability to pass protect, right? And all those things, because that's, obviously a really important part of the offense. But for some reason, we don't like to talk about offensive lines when they're carving out run lanes. And this Colts offensive line, as impressive as the pass protection has been the most impressive part of what they have done, in my opinion, as far as I'm concerned, is the way that they've run blocked. Once again, against two good fronts. Jonathan Taylor's averaging 5.5 yards per carry. And some of that has to do with Jonathan Taylor and, how good of a player he is, right? Because he's special. One of the 5 best running backs in the NFL. Okay? I mean, like that dude is an absolute stud, right? Blazing fast, good vision, breaks tackles, all those things, right? So part of, the fact that Jonathan Taylor's averaging 5.5 yards per carry is because of who Jonathan Taylor is. The other part of this, though, is the offensive line that has been opening up holes for him to run through left and right. And again, I was very wrong on Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves. They ran behind those two dudes a lot against Denver. I mean, like the big run where Jonathan Taylor rips off that, 68-yard run, they ran right. They ran behind Tanner Bortolini and Matt Gonsalves on that play. So while the pass protection has been very impressive, right, and that is something that is going to, continue to be discussed and talked about, like the Colts' ability to run the football has been every bit as impressive as the pass protection. And, I don't know how much other sports talk stuff you pay attention to. I pay attention to a lot of it just because I like this stuff. And I want to know what other people think about the Colts that aren't in the market. That way I can talk about how dumb they are. I have heard multiple people say and bring up the fact that the Saints started 2-0 last year. Zach Pearless brought it up yesterday. And I've heard them say that this is a similar thing with the Colts. And it is not. This is very different. What the Colts are doing is much more sustainable than what the Saints did last year. Okay? For 2 reasons. One, the Colts offensive line is significantly better this year than what the Saints had last year. Significantly better. Okay? Also, the Saints started 2-0 by crushing the Panthers, who were not good, and then by crushing the Cowboys, who were also not very good. Okay? And then from there, they actually had to play some good football teams, and they lost. The Colts, obviously beat a bad Dolphins team week 1, but then they beat a really good Broncos team week 2. Okay? That's the reality of it. And then in addition to that, not only is the offensive line much better than what the Saints had last year, but the coach is different. And the coach is better. Part of why the Saints started 2-0 last year is because Derek Carr played really well. And there was a very similar kind of storyline with him that there is with Daniel Jones right now. Is this the Derek Carr resurgence? Is this the Daniel Jones resurgence? And, you can say yes, you can say no, whatever. The difference is Dennis Allen was the head coach of the Saints, and Shane Steichen's the head coach of the Colts. Shane Steichen is a better offensive coach than Dennis Allen, who is currently the defensive coordinator for the very, very bad Chicago Bears. And so I just think it's going to be much easier for the Colts to maintain this high-level play at quarterback from Daniel Jones because of the offensive line, because of the run game, and then, of course, because Shane Steichen is an offensive-minded guy who played, quarterback in college, and he understands how to help his quarterback out and how to make things easier on them. Okay? I've said it. I'm going to keep saying it. Shane Steichen is a good football coach. Okay? He's had his, debacles here and there. The double reverse pass against the Broncos last year, trick plays and high leverage spots, throwing the ball to Tyler Goodson instead of Jonathan Taylor, the end of game clock management being way too conservative against the Broncos. Like, he's had his moments where things have not been good. But overall, the dude went 500 with Gardner Minshew, Joe Flacco, and Anthony Richardson as his starting quarterbacks, with never having better than the 28th ranked defense in the NFL. Okay? So this is, between Shane Steichen and the offensive line, this is a much better situation, the Colts this year, compared to the Saints 2-0 start from last year. So I'm just very tired of hearing people say that, because when people say that, they're just flat out wrong, and they probably bet the Colts under 7.5 wins, and they just want to be right. It's the reality of it. So that's going to do it for hour number 1 here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. During this break, here's what you should do. You should go to IndySportsTicket.com, and you should buy tickets to Bourbon and Birdie so you can join the Indy Sports Ticket people, me, on Saturday, October 4th, for an afternoon of just fun, sipping some high-end bourbon, hitting some golf balls. It's our second annual Bourbon and Birdies presented by Payless Liquors. It takes place once again at Back 9 Golf and Entertainment, same place as last year. Great venue, great place. It's going to be a day of sampling incredible bourbons, hitting golf balls, eating food, and hanging out with great people. We're going to have great vendors there. Heaven Hill, Sazerac, Jim Beam, Four Roses, Luxco, Angels Envy, great bourbon. Hotel Tango, great bourbon. Bardstown, love Bardstown. Jefferson Reserve, and a whole lot more. Burned by Rock Patel, Indy's Best Cigar Lounge. They'll be there as well. It's going to be a great event. Tickets are on sale now at IndySportsTicket.com. If you don't want to go to the website, you can also text Bourbon. That's Bourbon, Boubron. Whoa, I spelled that wrong. Bourbon to 317-228-1430. You can text that number. Once again, Bourbon, 317-228-1430 to buy tickets as well. It's going to be a great event. I can't wait. I just, this is the first time I've seen the vendors. I'm pumped now. Pumped. Love bourbon. There's going to be some great vendors on site, so make sure you buy your tickets and you show up. It's going to be a blast. More talk about the Colts on the other side.
do this. It's the real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Today's show is sponsored by Holiday World and Splashin' Safari. They've got awesome Halloween stuff going on right now. We're actually going to give away tickets here on the show. Let's give them away in 20 minutes. Why? Actually, yeah, 20 minutes, 11:20. We will give away the tickets to Holiday World and Splashin' Safari. They've got an awesome Sky Drone show going on right now. When they do those, they're always really, really cool. So Holiday World and Splashin' Safari is your sponsor for today's show. And we're going to be giving away tickets in 20 minutes. 317-228-1430. That is the number to call when we give those away. Now, the Colts, good football team, okay? Should improve to 3-0 this week. And, I talked about this a little bit yesterday. There's been just a shift in the leadership from the Indianapolis Colts. Cam Bynum has really just emerged as a guy who is really kind of taking on a leadership role. And there are certain guys that are just naturally leaders, like for their personality just kind of radiates in a different way. And every time you hear someone talk about Cam Bynum, he sounds like that kind of guy. Here is Colts defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo earlier in the week talking about the Colts' new free safety.
He does not ever have a bad day. He's always got a smile on his face. It's all about business. At the same time, he tries to make it fun for everybody. There's a reason why Cam is, one of the guys that we targeted in free agency. Can't say enough about how that all went down with Chris Ballard and his crew, man. It just made us a better team, and that's showing. Cam is not only a great player, but even a better guy. So super excited to have him.
And then one follow-up on Cam. I know you talked a little bit right there about his work ethic and stuff, but sometimes I think when you make plays like he does and he has so much fun, people can kind of forget that side of it. But from a professional standpoint, how serious have you seen him take the game?
Oh, no, he's very serious. He's along some of the better ones that I've ever had. He'll come in my office on Thursday, and we'll sit down together and kind of go through the game plan and, just making sure he's got all his I's dotted and his T's crossed. And that's just what the type of pro that he is, kind of doubling down on everything. So he's doing a great job.
Colts defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo right there talking about his new safety, Cam Bynum, and just how serious he takes his craft. And that is such a nice thing to hear. That the Colts have a serious guy on their defense, and that sounds like the kind of guy that you want to be a leader. Happy dude, never has a bad day, tries to make it a good time for everybody else, but he's also serious. Meets with the coach. I heard Shane Steichen in his press conference yesterday. He talked about how, Cam Bynum's just always doing extra work, working the jugs machine, working on his footwork and his back pedal and all that kind of stuff, and like those are the guys that you want leading your defense. Not, I have a podcast, Zaire Franklin, or I'll see how my body feels, DeForest Buckner. Like those were the guys leading this Colts defense before Cam Bynum showed up. And who would have thought? Like this very serious guy, arrives and is like, hey, not only am I going to, bring everybody along and be this connective piece that kind of gets everyone pulling in the same direction. I'm also going to be really serious about this and be better prepared than everybody else. And when you bring in guys like that, like it is a truly impactful and infectious thing. And you need to have guys like that on your team if you want to win football games. And the Colts just haven't had enough of that this last year. Like Cam Bynum sounds incredibly easy to follow. And those are the best leaders, are the guys that are just, for one reason or another, infectious and easy to just kind of follow along behind. Okay. And that's really what every team is looking for in their leaders. Okay. He doesn't do a podcast right? There's a lot of extra work that he does, and he celebrates in style when it pays off. Very likable, very hard worker. And the biggest shift that we've seen for the Colts this year is who the leaders are. It's no longer only one vote per household, EJ Speed. If that guy has a voice on your team, then you were doomed. You're probably not going to be very good. Okay? Oh, look at that. Houston got him, and now they're 0-2. Okay? It's no longer podcaster Zaire Franklin. It's Cam Bynum, who's very serious about his craft, right? And brings other people along as well. Okay? On the offensive line, the leader's no longer Ryan Kelly, who had been here, for a decade, and it made sense for him to be the leader. And he seemed like, fine guy, a guy who liked being here in Indianapolis, seemed like a nice dude. But that's kind of the problem. Like, there are certain positions where I don't want you to be a nice dude. Okay? I want some nasty. Okay? That's what I want. And offensive line is one of those positions where I don't want there to be a nice guy leading the charge. Okay? I want big, mean, nasty dudes. And Quentin Nelson, he is the new leader on that offensive line. And yes, very nice guy off the field, all that kind of stuff. But that dude's nasty on the football field, man. Like that dude does not care. I love his press conferences when someone asks him what he deems a dumb question, and he's just like, I don't know. Next question. It's awesome. Okay? And you need some of that in your leadership on your team, and I think Quentin Nelson provides that. And then, of course, like, your quarterback is always going to be your leader. Always. Anthony Richardson struggled to get serious. That's just a reality. Okay? And he just didn't get what it took to be a starting quarterback. Right? And that's kind of frustrating. Right? You would have thought that he would have learned that as the face of, the Florida Gators, one of the bigger brands in college football. But he didn't. Daniel Jones is a guy who comes in, is fighting for his career. So, he's doing all the extra things. And he's as serious as they come. And you learn very quickly what it means, or what it is, to be the face of an organization when you play in New York. Okay? Daniel Jones gets it. So the shift in leadership has been such a large part of why the Colts are a better football team this year than they have been. Because it's a lot of the same guys. The guys leading the charge, though, are just a little bit different. The Titans, that is their next opponent. The Colts should improve to 3-0 on Sunday. There's one guy who picked the Titans to beat the Colts. Is Daniel Jeremiah, I'm assuming, is who it was. Daniel Jeremiah is going to be wrong. No way the Colts are losing on the road to a team as bad as the Tennessee Titans. Okay, I don't think that the Titans are the worst team in the NFL. I think it's probably the Saints. Maybe it's the Jets. Even though, to be fair, the Jets did hang 32 on the Steelers. The Panthers, they're really bad. If you haven't seen the Panthers play, I would recommend you keep it that way. But either way, the Titans, they're in that group of not very good football teams in the NFL. Okay, Cam Ward has gotten off to nothing short of a terrible start. Okay, he's only completed 50% of his passes. Sounds like Anthony Richardson. He's only completed half of his passes. He's only thrown for 287 yards through 2 games. That is abysmal, right? When you're throwing for less than 150 yards a game, then that you got to get those numbers up, right? Not a good sign at all for the Titans if that's what they're going to get from this guy that they took number 1 overall. But to be fair to him, because I do like being fair, the Tennessee Titans did play 2 really good opponents these first 2 weeks. Okay, Bo Nix and the Broncos, like, they are a good team. Okay, that defense, I know the Colts didn't make it look like this, but that defense is really good, or it is really talented, right? Maybe it's not really good. Maybe for some reason the talent isn't going to combine like it did last year and they're going to struggle. I would find that very surprising. But, like that was they did play against a really good Broncos defense. And then last week, they played against a really good Rams defense. Okay, like that Rams defense, it feels like they hit on every defensive guy that they draft. It's really, really impressive. And like the pass rush for the Rams is like legitimately good between Jared Verse and Braden Fisk and Kobe Turner playing, defensive tackle, and Byron Young is a really good player. So like there's a lot of talent, especially in that front four for the Los Angeles Rams. They're really pretty solid on the back end as well. So like they've played two really good defenses, and that's part of why they've struggled. The other parts of why they've struggled, at least in terms of Cam Ward, is the weapons aren't very good. Okay, like the weapons that the Titans have are bad. Like there's just no other way to really put it. Okay, like their best weapons, Tony Pollard, who ran for 1,300 yards last year. That's not a bad thing. Like he's a good player. The problem is when he's your best skill player. That's when it becomes problematic. Ever since Calvin Ridley got suspended for a year, he's come back and just not been as good as he was. Elik Aomanor, their other receiver, not great. Tyler Lockett, really old. Chig Okonkwo, not very good either. Okay, Gunnar Helm, the backup, could be good. We'll see. He was a second-round pick, tight end out of Texas. Very athletic, very big. We'll see if he pans out or not. But the weapons just aren't very good. With that being said, I do expect for Cam Ward and the Titans offense to find more success this week against the Colts than they did against the Rams and the Broncos, simply because the Colts defense isn't as good as theirs. Okay? The Colts pass rush isn't very good. Definitely not as good as the Rams or the Broncos. What those two teams are running out there in terms of a front four. Okay. And then the Colts run defense, not as good as either one of those teams either. The Colts are going to be amongst the worst teams in the NFL this year in stopping the run. Okay. And when you can run the football, it makes everything easier. And everyone's going to be able to run the football against the Indianapolis Colts this year. Like that is just the very simple reality of what is going to happen to this Colts defense. The hope for them is to generate a negative play on first down and then rely on that secondary to hopefully get them off the field. Okay? That's kind of what they're hoping for. I wouldn't bet on it. Okay? I wouldn't. No pass rush from the Colts, and inability to stop the run just it makes it tough to get stops, as we saw on Sunday against the Broncos. I think their real hope in terms of being a good enough defense is to force turnovers like they have in these first two games. And when you're playing a young rookie, and that's what he is right now, he's a young rookie, Cam Ward. He, he might throw you one, even though he hasn't. To his credit, he hasn't thrown anything yet. Like he hasn't thrown a pick. I don't think he hasn't turned the football over once. So he's got that going for him. But I expect to see Lou Anarumo show some exotic pressures and, make things kind of tough on Cam Ward and his, processing, and they'll change the picture and do all those things. That'll be made easier with Javarius Ward very likely being back. So very excited for Colts Titans on Sunday. I'll be even more excited tomorrow when Seth the Flow Erskines drops his Friday Colts song. We'll play it on the Dan Dockett show as we always do. So when we come back in about 4 minutes, Blaiden Kirk from the Stay Hot Pod is going to join the show. We're going to keep talking Colts and their 2-0 start. And if you call in right now, 317-228-1430, you will have a chance to win tickets to Holiday World. They're doing some awesome Halloween themed stuff right now. 317-228-1430. That is the number for your chance to win Holiday World tickets. Blaiden Kirk coming up in 4 minutes.
Package at noon. The Real Jonathan Smith Show. Now, this is Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
What's going on? Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy's Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in, whether that's YouTube, Indy Sports Ticket. If you want to head over there and subscribe, maybe you're watching on X, _ Jonathan Smith, to follow me there. You can also listen on the Indy Sports Ticket app or 1430 AM. If you are watching on X, go ahead and just search for @Blaiden. That way you can follow our current guest, Blaiden Kirk, from the Stay Hot podcast. It is excellent. You should go and listen to it. What's going on, Blaiden?
Hey, Jonathan, how are you doing? Colts are 2-0.
Colts are 2-0, so I'm great. My entire life is dependent on the Colts being good and the Arkansas Razorbacks being good. One of them are, the other is not. But that's okay. I can take 1 for 2. I've been 0 for 2, what feels like the last 4 years. So I can live with this.
Yeah, and I'm a Browns fan, so my life is about as normal as it's always been.
Yeah, the Browns. That's just, week 1. Oh, what happened week 1? I felt like they should have beaten whoever they played. That's right. They missed 2 field goals. That's right.
They missed field goals. They missed an extra point. They had a drop that turned into an interception. They had 2 drops turn into interceptions, and then they had a drop on 4th down. Like, just everything that could have gone wrong went wrong for them. Yeah.
Jeez, just brutal. Do you think Browns fans were more disappointed or more frustrated after that loss, or Broncos fans were more frustrated after their loss to the Colts after the whole leverage call?
Look, I think Browns fans know what to expect at this point. Broncos fans, I feel like, are a little bit more used to winning, at least in the last year. So they might be a little more upset. But I don't know, man. The Colts are kind of a good team. I underestimated them, I think, a little bit coming into this year.
You're not the only one, man. I did the exact same thing. Blaiden Kirk of the Stay Hot Pod is joining me. We're talking about the Colts being 2-0. And Blaiden, I thought I was going to get on the show today and celebrate even more the Colts being 2-0. But whenever I watch or listen to a lot of the sports talk stuff that I listen to, I've heard so many people compare the 2-0 Colts to the 2-0 Saints from last year. I think that's just wrong. Then again, I've got some rose-colored glasses going on right now. So I'll just ask you, how likely is it that the Colts, they're probably not going to be as bad as the Saints were, but kind of the same idea where the 2-0 is a little fake?
Well, I understand why you might think the 2-0 is a little fake. Daniel Jones, he played for 6 years in New York and wasn't good for any of them. Even the year they made the playoffs, that year was kind of fake, right? So is it unreasonable to think it could be a little fake this year too? Maybe, but he's playing well now. And I guess that's the main thing to keep an eye out. Theo just posted a video breaking a lot of this down on Stay Hot's Patreon page, but it's not like they're getting lucky. They're not getting a ton of huge breaks where everything's going their way. The team's just playing well. They've got really great weapons on the outside. They've got really great weapons everywhere. And that's, I think, the main thing is we're now seeing how if you can just get the ball in an area, you've got Michael Pittman Jr., who is great at the sideline, and Alec Pierce, who's got blazing speed and is also a great contested catch player. And Tyler Warren fits really perfectly into this offense. He can stretch the field vertically. He can run the ball. He can be a check down guy underneath. And then, of course, you have Jonathan Taylor, who is still proving to be one of the top backs in the league. This offense ended up having a much higher floor than I think a lot of people expected with Daniel as a quarterback.
I completely agree. It's amazing what happens when you just complete passes. And a large part of that, too, is, there were questions about the Colts offensive line coming into the year, especially at center and right guard. Those two guys have been awesome. And that's the other thing. And that to me is kind of what separates this year's Colts team from last year's Saints team. Like, all the weapons, as you mentioned, are playing really well. And this Colts offensive line, like, look, I think it's probably been the 5th best offensive line in the NFL to start the year, behind the Lions, who I know got wrecked week 1, but that's Micah Parsons and the Packers. Like, come on now. The Eagles, I had this list made up last night. The Broncos, and I forgot who I had 4th. But the offensive line has been really good. And as long as they stay healthy up front, I do expect for the Colts offense to continue to hum, you know?
Was the 4th team perhaps Tampa?
Yeah, no. Well, I think that's Baker Mayfield.
Pre-worst.
Yeah. Before the Wirfs injury, yes, and then their right tackle got hurt on Monday night as well, which really stinks. Were you more surprised at the Colts starting 2-0 or the Houston Texans starting 0-2?
Texans, I'm not so shocked on, just because their offensive line is atrocious. And we just talked about this on today's episode of Stay Hot, where, like, people want to try and find the one thing that's wrong, right? There's like, if we could just fix this one thing, maybe things could be better, right? But the problem with Houston is that it's a little bit of everything. It's like, okay, the offensive line is terrible. It's not any better than it was last year, despite the all the changes that they've made. It's still a terrible offensive line. They still can't pick up stunts. The receivers outside of Nico Collins are not good, because everyone else they've got that was good is injured, and then the guys behind them are just not good at all, and they traded away John Mechie. So, like, it's a very bleak receiving core. And then also Stroud just hasn't been playing that well. Like, Stroud is not handling pressure well. He's an accurate passer, but he has not been handling pressure well, and he's under pressure all the time. So it's like there's a lot of things that are going against the Houston Texans right now. So it doesn't totally shock me that they are sitting at 0-2. Kansas City, that one is a little more shocking. Now, they have Rashid Rice suspended, Xavier Worthy injured like in the first quarter of week 1. So things can look better for them than they do right now, but still tough to start that way when you're seen as one of the main contenders in the AFC.
It is, and it's really funny. It's like, I don't know how you feel about the Cardinals, so I'll just say how I do. Like, I like the Cardinals, but it could also be because they played the Saints and the Panthers. And part of the thing with the Chiefs is, like, they played the Chargers, who I think are the 3rd best team in the AFC. That was the 4th team I had. Even without Rashawn Slater, their offensive line has been so good.
Their run blocking is not up to par right now, because their pass protection has been great.
That's true. The running the football has not been great. Omarion Hampton showed up, saw how the Chargers ran the football last year, and was like, let's go. And it has just not been great. But they've been really good. The Eagles are obviously awesome. They're gonna play the Giants this week. I think Xavier Worthy's gonna be back. I haven't checked in on that. I think that, they'll win this week, and then we'll feel fine about the Chiefs.
Right.
But I don't know. And then who else is 2-0? Who's the? I talked about this earlier in the week. Who's the? I don't want to call them fraudulent. That is not the right word. But, like, who's the 2-0 team that you're, like, a little wary of?
I mean, we have to talk about Cincinnati, dude. Their 2 wins have come off of the Browns game that we just talked about, right? Where like the Browns could have easily won that game. They were in control for most of it, and then 2 missed field goals, a missed extra point, and multiple drops that directly resulted in turnovers. I mean, that's about as gifted of a victory as you get. And now Joe Burrow's hurt. They won with Jake Browning over the Jacksonville Jaguars. That's a game that I also felt like was sort of gifted on a silver platter, with the way that Brian Thomas Jr. played and Trevor Lawrence. And, like, honestly, Trevor, I thought, played pretty well. But it definitely feels like they've been handed their first 2 victories of the season. I don't know. I struggle to believe that this Bengals team is as good as their record suggests.
I agree. I wrote them down. Once again, joined by Blaiden Kirk from the Stay Hot Pod. You should go listen. It is an outstanding podcast. It's in my very normal rotation, so make sure you go and listen to that. So I wrote down the Bengals. I also wrote down the Niners because, like, if Kobe Bryant can just put his hands up in week 1, then that Brock Purdy prayer of a pass falls incomplete. And then last week they beat the Saints, but it's also just all of the injury stuff already. Like Brock Purdy's already missed a game. Ayuk obviously not back yet. George Kittle's already hurt. Christian McCaffrey's going to get hurt. Trent Williams, 37 years old, probably going to get banged up at some point. So I agree with you. Like those are kind of the two teams that I'm pretty concerned about. I do want to get back to the Colts though. What is the one thing about them that you've seen from them that you do find concerning? That, like, if they were to regress and maybe miss the playoffs, it would be because of what?
I mean, if they're going to regress, it's going to be because Daniel Jones doesn't sustain 71% completion percentage and 9.3 yards per attempt. Like, that's what it's going to be, you know? Because even last week, it was a 1-point victory. You know, and if they lose that game, we're probably having a very different conversation. We're probably having a conversation about the defense. It's good. It's not great. And so I think there's two aspects to this. The first is there could be some Daniel Jones regression down the line. And also, if there is are they going to be able to put up enough points week to week to keep their defense honest and keep their defense right?
That is the question for me. Like the offense, I think will look. Daniel Jones, he's made like one bad decision at like in terms of where to throw the football, and he got lucky because it was a drop pick that came against Miami. So like he's not going to play this perfect for the rest of the year. But I think even when he kind of comes back down to earth a little bit, like you can still run the football with Jonathan Taylor and do those things. I'm much more concerned about the defense. I know people around here are gripping to the fact that like Javarius Ward didn't play. But even when he does play, like Xavier Howard, who had to take a gap year last year, is still your other corner. The pass rush is not very good. The run defense, Blaiden, like you said this defense isn't great, but like it's good. You're way nicer than me, man. I'm so concerned about the run defense on top of it. Like Joe Bocci was like a rotational guy for the Bengals last year, and now he's your starting linebacker. Like that's not great. I'm really concerned about the defense.
Into the year, that was something that's always been concerning to me. So
can you say that again? You broke up a little bit there.
Oh yeah, the linebackers were a concern to me coming into the year. Like Zaire Franklin, I've said is the worst, best linebacker in football. Like he can start for you, but you don't want him starting for you. And then, like you said, the other linebackers on the field right now just really are not up to par. Xavier Howard being a starting cornerback in 2025 is it's hilarious. It's hilariously like bad to have that position in place. But I still have maybe I'm giving them too much credit for the Dolphins game because Tua was so bad and they couldn't get anything going.
They couldn't, and that felt like a Lou Anarumo thing, which is like I think that would be the thing that makes you feel like okay, because he's funky and he's going to show different pressures and like the Tua turned it over 3 times because he didn't see a blitz and he threw 2 really bad picks. The Bo Nix pick, the Bo Nix pick on Sunday, Colts showed pressure, backed out, looked like Bo Nix rushed it a little bit. Guys tend to leave the ball a little high whenever they're rushing it, and then obviously Sales and Cam Bynum, everyone's new favorite Colts, not named Daniel Jones, makes a really nice play. That is the one thing with the Colts this year. Like we talked about a lot of the concerns on defense. I do like their safeties. Like Nick Cross has been really good. Yeah. Cam Bynum's played really well. if you're going to have a strong area somewhere defensively, I don't think that I want to say that it's your safeties,
Yeah, I mean, there's teams that I look at, like Baltimore. I would consider a team to have really good safeties, but also they have Kyle Hamilton, who is probably, he might be the best pound for pound defensive player in the sport. So there's that. But no, I mean, and it's funny Nick Cross being good for the Colts because he was so bad in Cincinnati with the same defensive coordinator, Lou Anarumo. So that's very funny as well. But yeah, I mean, I like the defensive line. I hate the linebackers. I'm iffy on the corners. Xavier Howard's hilarious, and the safeties are good.
Yeah, okay. What do you like about the defensive front?
I mean, I still like Grover Stewart. I still like DeForest Buckner. I'm waiting for the Latu breakout. I'm still waiting for that. That's my hope for this year.
That it feels like there's just been so much put on him, and he hurt his hamstring, he didn't play last week,
right?
And so,
no,
that's obviously concerning because hamstrings are weird and they never really go away once you hurt them. So, the edge rusher thing is that's a major problem. I do agree though. Buckner and Stewart, they give you something, but it's not great.
Yeah.
The Colts are set to play against the Titans this week. Everyone's kind of giving Cam Ward a hard time. And I'm I don't know. He played the Broncos, whose defense is really good. And he played the Rams, whose defense is really good as well. And the weapons in Tennessee, it's, there's a reason why they had the number 1 overall pick. What do you like about Cam Ward, and what do you think is concerning after these first 2 games?
I'm a huge Cam Ward fan, even through the statistical struggles. I think he's been really great pre-snap, diagnosing and calling out his protections. And he's done a good job of getting the ball out on time and being accurate. And then, of course, he's hit a couple of ridiculous crossbody throws in the first 2 games. One backed up in his own end zone against the Broncos to Calvin Ridley. And then the one this past week, too, I think was to A.O. Manor in the end zone, of course, against the Rams. So, I mean, these types of throws and the type of accuracy and timing that he's been operating with really gets me excited for the future of the Titans offense. But the rest of this offense has not been up to par. The offensive line has been atrocious. Callahan has been a terrible play caller, I think. I think the game plan offensively has not been very good. I've seen them run a lot of max protection plans that really don't hold up, and they've got field, and they're both vertical routes, and Cam Ward has pressure immediately and has no chance. So he takes a bad sack, and it looks bad on him, but there's really nothing he can do. And the receivers really can't separate that well, and when they do, they haven't really been able to catch all that well either. That being said, I would be concerned about, people get excited about this Colts team, and I think Theo locked the Colts this week. This feels like a trap game against Tennessee.
Division games are tough. That is the thing that no one really talks about. Because when you play the same team twice every year, you obviously become familiar. The defensive coordinator for the Titans coached with Shane Steichen in Philly, so there's a lot of familiarity there. I'm with you. I don't get me wrong. I'm going to pick the Colts. I just don't think I'm going to bet the Colts. Yes, can you hear me? Oh no, we may have lost him.
Oh no.
But nope. Blaiden, you there? Here. He's calling back in. Blaiden, thank you for calling back in, man.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. All right. Blaiden, I'm just going to shoot him a text. That's really weird. We can hear him. He can't hear us. That has never happened before. Usually it's the other way around. That is Blaiden Kirk, does a really good job over on the Stay Hot Pod. Yeah, so I'm just going to probably end the interview there. Well, actually, no, here. Let's try one more time. Blaiden, can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you now. Okay, there we go.
There it is. What? Oh, no. Did you just drop?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep. We're good. We're good.
All right. We're back.
That's high level radio right there. Let's, testing the phone live. As you were saying with Ward, the offensive line, once again, this is Blaiden Kirk from the Stay Hot Pod talking Colts and Titans. Like the Titans offensive line should be good. J.C. Latham, 7th overall pick 2 years ago. Peter Skoronski, 11th overall pick. The center they took, he was a 3rd round pick out of LSU. So like they've invested in the offensive line, but as you said, it's still kind of struggling. Why do you think that is?
Dude, I think there's a couple of. I think it's a lot of. They've brought in these offensive linemen who each, in their own right, have like a small issue that makes it difficult for them. In some, like Peter Skoronski has like smaller arms, shorter arms, right? So that was something that people were concerned about. Latham, I think, has slightly slower feet than you would like to see. He got beat around the edge by Jonathan Cooper a lot in the debut game against Denver. So there are things I think that just compound themselves, where it's like you've got a bunch of these little issues that stack up, and also they're just young. And I think that's kind of the other thing is you've got these small issues that compound, and you've got young guys. But I think the thing that really has me concerned is their offensive line coach is Bill Callahan. Like, that is the offensive line coach. That's the guy. And so if you're not getting good offensive line production out of him, then I think you might have just whiffed on like every pick. Either that or Callahan's washed and he just doesn't have his fastball anymore.
Yeah, I think it's tough to coach a position and be the head coach, even though Nick Saban did it forever at Alabama. So maybe I'm just making up an excuse that isn't valid. That's really interesting. I didn't realize that he was also their offensive line coach.
Well, so his son is it's Brian Callahan's head coach.
That's right. Okay.
And Bill Callahan's the offensive line coach. Yeah. So it's weird because I almost wonder if Bill is sort of calling the shots a little bit behind the scenes.
That would make sense. Okay. Look, Brian Callahan had a really rough moment. Once again, joined by Blaiden Kirk from the Stay Hot Pod, talking about the Colts and the Titans on Sunday. He had a pretty brutal moment after the Denver game where he basically admitted to not knowing the rule about how your elbow counts as 2 feet down. Look, Mike McDaniel, if he got fired tonight, I wouldn't be surprised. Any chance Brian Callahan's the second guy fired this year?
I think it's very possible. I'm looking at their schedule right now, and they've obviously got the Colts this weekend. Then they've got Houston, Arizona, Vegas, New England. There's a lot of winnable games in this stretch, right? I think if they get to the bye week and they are, the bye week is where I could see him getting fired. I'm trying to decide how many wins they should have. I think anything less than 3, and I think he could be gone.
Yeah, that's not. I don't know. I like Arizona. Then again, maybe I'm getting tricked. I love the Raiders.
I like Arizona too. I think that's a perfectly fine team. But like you're telling, they can. I think they could get one game against Indianapolis. They're off. Like this is a team that has not shown a ton of juice off the edge as we've seen so far. They can. I think they could definitely get a game against Houston. The Raiders have not looked that great, and the Patriots haven't looked that great so far. So I have to believe there are 3 wins in here somewhere. But I think a lot of it demands better play calling, better performance out of the offensive line, and better performance from the receivers.
Joined by Blaiden Kirk from the Stay Hot Pod. Last thing for you, Blaiden, and I will let you go. I like the Titans defense. Like they played 6 really good quarters of defense to open the season. And then Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay were like, enough of this. We're going to score 23 points in in the second half. Jeffrey Simmons obviously has been one of the better defensive tackles in the NFL since 2021. L'Jarius Sneed finally healthy after hurting his quad last year. I like the Titans defense. I feel like that should be the strength of the team. What do you make of the Titans and their defense through 2 games?
I'm right there with you. I think their defense has been really good. Obviously, it was part of the reason why they were in the game against Denver. This is an offense that I thought people were very high on coming into this year after Bo Nix's rookie season. And Tennessee kind of put them on watch. Like, these guys might not be that good, but also Tennessee's defense, I think, might just be a little bit better than people thought coming into the year as well. And then, obviously, the Rams, I think, are just the Rams. And like you said, Stafford and McVay, when they lock in, and they can do basically whatever they want. They're one of those quarterback, head coach, off of the play caller duos that can really, really just be dangerous at any point in the season. That's the other thing that really concerns me, and why I think it could be a trap game coming into week 3. The Colts, if there were a time for the Colts offense to sort of sputter, I think it could be against this Tennessee defense that was a little bit underrated coming into the season.
Their defense was good last year. They just had Will Levis playing quarterback. Like, that was the problem.
That's why it's so underrated. This is why the Browns defense was underrated last year also. If every defensive drive starts past midfield, they're always going to end in points.
They are, and that is, I'm glad you brought that up, because I've had a take that I've been wanting to get off, but no one has given me the opportunity. The new kickoff rule. We're going to see more points just because the football is starting at like the 35 and the 40 pretty consistently now. And so I'm actually, I love the new rule. I know people don't like how it looks. I'm not a looks guy. If you saw my face, you would understand why. And so I do think that, like you said, field position is such a big part of offense, and the new kickoff rule, I think, greatly kind of helps that.
Yes.
So
yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right on that. We've seen a lot of teams start, with really good field position. I mean, most possessions I feel like are starting, you definitely past the 30, 35, and some are near the 40-yard line now.
Yeah, like if you watch, I don't know if you heard Shane Steichen after the Broncos game, but he managed the end of that game horribly, just way too conservative. But his point, I think, was very valid. He's like, the Broncos started at like the 40-yard line every time we kicked it off. Like, I didn't want to give them the football back. And I was like, you know what? Like, that's a really valid point. And it sounds like the Colts special teams needs to improve, but I do think this is a league-wide thing. The Bears ran into that against the Vikings as well. So really interesting stuff. Blaiden, thanks for your time. When does the next episode of the Stay Hot Pod come out?
Well, we just dropped an episode today we talked about the Texans, talked about the Patriots and why Travion Henderson isn't getting as many touches as people would like to see, and talked about Seattle's defense and what they've been doing right. So should be a good listen if anyone's interested in those teams. But we've got some more stuff coming out. Of course, we'll do a week 3 recap that'll come out Monday.
Okay, sounds good. Blaiden, thanks for your time, man.
Thank you.
That is Blaiden Kirk. You can check him out on X at Blaiden. Make sure you go check out the Stay Hot Pod as well. Like I said, it's fantastic. Very normal in my rotation. More on the Colts and their 2-0 start and their upcoming game against the Titans in 3 minutes.
may, one day, be a must-listen for sports enthusiasts.
Yeah, and monkeys might fly out of my butt.
Uh-oh. The Real Jonathan Smith Show on Indy Sports Ticket, 1430 AM, 93.9 HD2, and always on the free Indy Sports Ticket app.
Welcome back to the Real Jonathan Smith Show here on Indy Sports Ticket. Thank you for tuning in, no matter how you're tuning in. Congratulations to Todd earlier, who won our tickets to Holiday World. I believe we are giving more away tomorrow. I can actually check that right now. Let me check that. We are giving away more Holiday World tickets tomorrow right here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show, so make sure you're tuned in for it. Shout out to Holiday World for sponsoring today's show. They got a bunch of awesome stuff going on. Head over to IndySportsTicket.com. Do yourself two favors. One, Dick's Last Resort is serving up sarcasm and dishing out all the good grub that your faces can handle. Starting at 9 a.m. tomorrow, go to IndySportsTicket.com and click on the Sweet Deals tab to get not one, but two $25 gift certificates for only $25. And while you're over at IndySportsTicket.com, buy your tickets to our second annual Bourbon and Birdies presented by Payless Liquors. It's October 4th. It's going to be so much fun. An afternoon of sipping high-end bourbon, hitting some golf balls. Great vendors are going to be there, including Heaven Hill, Jim Beam, Four Roses, Angels Envy, Bardstown. Love Bardstown. It takes place at Blaiden Golf and Entertainment. Going to be a great day, sampling bourbon, hitting golf balls, eating food, and hanging out with awesome, awesome people. Saturday, it'll be on a Saturday. October 4th is a Saturday, so we'll have the IU game up. Last year while we were there, we had the IU game on, and it was a blast. Okay, Back Nine does a great job hosting any and all events, and the Colts are going to do a great job going down to Nashville on Sunday. This is hopefully going to be a game that we can turn off like halfway through the fourth quarter. Okay, like that's the hope. That's what it should look like. You know, I fully expect for Lou Anarumo to put Cam Ward's mind in like a mind pretzel and just confuse him. I expect for the Colts to turn the football over multiple times in that game, or excuse me, for the Colts to force multiple turnovers in that game. Daniel Jones can hopefully keep it rolling. I do think that Titans defense is pretty good. The issue is they just haven't had good quarterback play. And when you're turning the football over, you just put your defense in a really, really tough spot. That's going to do it here on the Real Jonathan Smith Show. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to tune in, no matter how you tuned in, whether that was YouTube. Go subscribe, Indy Sports Ticket. Maybe you watched on X__Jonathan Smith. Maybe you listen on the app, 1430 a.m. No matter how you listened, I greatly appreciate it. Keep it here. The Dan Dockett Show comes your way next. I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 10 a.m. I will talk to you then.